Human communication is a sophisticated lie because while the mouth is designed to deceive, the nervous system is biologically incapable of hiding the truth. Every smile that doesn't reach the eyes and every word uttered with a hidden tremor is actually telling a secret story that contradicts the spoken narrative. Most people are deceived because they listen to what they are told, but a strategic architect watches what is hidden, the micro-leaks, the limbic flashes, and the direction of the feet that strip away a person's true intentions before they even finish a sentence. In this video, I'm not just teaching you body language, I'm handing you the silent grip that makes you the most powerful person in any room. Because when you can read a mind before a single syllable is formed, you don't just influence people, you own the environment. Are you ready to tear away the mask that the world wears and start reading every human being like an open book? Because once you see the truth, you will never be able to hear a lie again. Welcome to the mastery of human perception. The fundamental reality of human interaction is that the mouth is a frequent liar, but the nervous system is a biological, honest broker. And learning to read anyone instantly requires you to stop listening to the words people offer and start observing the micro-leaks of their true intent with the cold, clinical precision of an apex predator. To master this, you must first understand that the body is a symphony of subconscious signals that operate far below the level of conscious control, creating a silent narrative that either confirms or contradicts the spoken narrative. And because this narrative is driven by the limbic system, the brain's honest, survival-oriented core, it is nearly impossible to fake consistently. When you walk into any room, whether it is a high-stakes boardroom or a casual social gathering, you must immediately begin the process of baseline calibration, which is the most critical step that most amateur observers skip. You are looking for the individual's normal state of being when they are under no pressure, the specific rhythm of their breathing, the natural blink rate of their eyes, and the resting tension in their facial muscles, because without a baseline, a signal has no objective meaning. High-level body language reading is not about isolated gestures like crossed arms or a hand on the chin, which can be misleading. It is about clustering, where you look for 3 or more synchronized signals that point toward a single emotional truth, ensuring that you aren't misinterpreting a single uncomfortable chair for a signal of deep-seated deception. For example, if someone is smiling, but the muscles around their eyes, the orbicularis oculi, known as the Duchenne marker, remain static, while their feet are pointed toward the exit and they are subconsciously shielding their torso with a laptop or a bag, they aren't being nice or engaged. They are experiencing a high-stress flight response and are desperate to leave your presence, even if their words are filled with praise. You must pay obsessive, almost fanatical attention to the lower extremities because the feet are the most honest part of the human body. While we are trained from the age of 3 to mask our facial expressions to please our parents and teachers, we rarely think about what our feet are doing, making them the most reliable indicators of intent. If a person's feet are angled toward you, they are truly present. If they are angled away, their mind has already left the room, regardless of how intense their eye contact might be. Furthermore, you must look for pacifying behaviors, which are the subtle, repetitive ways the brain attempts to soothe itself under the pressure of a lie, a hidden secret, or a perceived threat. This includes neck touching, adjusting a watch, or rubbing the suprasternal notch at the base of the throat, actions that are direct indicators of a spike in cortisol and a frantic attempt to regain internal balance. Strategic observation requires you to remain emotionally neutral so that your own presence doesn't contaminate the data. If you are too aggressive or too eager, you will trigger defensive signals that aren't about the person's character, but about your threat level, leading to a false positive in your analysis.
You must learn to read the pupillary response and the blink rate, recognizing that a sudden increase in blink rate is often a sign of cognitive load, the brain working overtime to maintain a fabricated story or hide a piece of information that it knows is damaging. In high-stakes environments, the person who can read these silent shifts holds the ultimate silent grip over the interaction, because they are seeing the world as it actually is, not as it is being presented by the ego of the speaker. This first section deconstructs the myth that body language is a soft skill. It is, in fact, a rigorous and reliable form of human intelligence gathering that allows you to see through the social masks that people spend their entire lives perfecting. By the end of this analysis, you will realize that people are constantly screaming their secrets through the tilt of their head, the tension in their jaw, and the way they occupy or surrender space. You are no longer listening to what they say, you are watching what they do. And in that gap between word and action, the truth is laid bare for you to harvest. You must also recognize the hierarchy of dominance expressed through physical expansion. The one who takes up the most space, who moves with the least urgency, and who maintains comfortable eye contact without aggressive staring, is the one who holds the natural frame. Conversely, those who contract their bodies, touch their faces frequently, or use barrier objects like coffee mugs or folders to block their vital organs are signaling a lack of internal sovereignty and a high state of vulnerability. This biopsychological audit allows you to map out the power dynamics of any room within seconds of entering, giving you a massive head start in any negotiation or social exchange. You are shifting from a passive participant to a strategic architect of human behavior, using the nervous system's own honesty as your primary tool for dominance. The mouth can be trained to deceive, but the limbic system has no interest in social niceties. It only cares about safety, threat, and status. When you learn to see the limbic flashes in the corner of an eye or the twitch of a finger, you are reading the soul of the individual, bypassing their carefully constructed mask entirely. Imagine the power of knowing with absolute certainty when a business partner is hesitating on a deal, not because of the price, but because of a lack of trust that they haven't yet voiced. Imagine the advantage of seeing a friend's hidden envy before they have the chance to sabotage your success. This is not just about reading people, it is about anticipating them. Most people are reactive, waiting for someone to speak before they form an opinion, but the strategic reader is proactive, knowing what the person is going to say before the first syllable is formed. This level of insight requires a disciplined detachment. You must stop looking at people through the lens of your own emotions and start looking at them as biological machines that are constantly leaking data. You must analyze the spatial relationships, or proxemics, observing how close someone allows you to get before they show signs of ventral rubbing or ventral guarding, which is the instinct to protect the front of the body. If you move 6 inches closer and they subconsciously adjust their posture to create a barrier, you have found their comfort perimeter, and crossing it can be used either to build rapport or to exert pressure, depending on your goal. Every tilt of the cranium, every swallow of the throat, and every micro-shrug of a single shoulder is a piece of a puzzle that, when assembled, reveals the exact psychological landscape of the person standing before you. You are no longer a victim of deception, you are a master of perception. This is the first step in the mastery of the silent grip, the realization that the world is an open book, and you have finally learned how to read the language in which it is written, a language that predates speech and remains the most powerful form of communication on the planet.
The face is the most complex biological canvas on Earth. A sophisticated interface of 43 muscles capable of generating over 10,000 unique expressions. Yet for the strategic observer, it is a leaky faucet of involuntary truth that reveals the soul long before the conscious mind can intervene. To master the anatomy of deception, you must move beyond the obvious smiles and frowns and begin to hunt for micro-expressions, those fleeting, involuntary flashes of emotion that last for only a fraction of a second, often appearing as a quick twitch of the brow or a subtle curl of the lip before the person's social mask is slammed back into place. These flashes are governed by the extrapyramidal motor system, which bypasses the thinking brain entirely, meaning that even the most practiced liars cannot stop their true feelings from erupting onto their skin for a millisecond. When you are analyzing a face, you must focus on the T-zone, the forehead, eyes, nose, and mouth. But you must prioritize the eyes above all else, because while the mouth is the most easily manipulated tool of the ego, the eyes are the direct windows to the limbic system. Observe the palpebral fissure, which is the space between the eyelids. When a person feels genuine fear or surprise, the eyelids pull back to expose more of the white sclera, an ancient survival reflex designed to widen the field of vision. But if you see this flash during a standard negotiation, you have just identified a hidden pressure point that the speaker is trying to conceal. Furthermore, the true depth of facial reading lies in understanding the asymmetry of intent, where you recognize that a genuine emotion is almost always symmetrical because it is a holistic biological response, whereas a forced or socially engineered expression often favors one side of the face, usually the left side, which is more directly controlled by the emotional right hemisphere of the brain, leading to a slight, barely perceptible imbalance that signals a fabrication. One of the most dangerous and frequently overlooked microexpressions is contempt, characterized by a single-sided pull of the corner of the mouth. This is a signal of moral superiority and lack of respect, and if you see it in a business partner, a spouse, or a competitor, the structural integrity of that relationship is already compromised. To read these signals instantly, you must practice visual slicing, where you mentally divide the face into quadrants and look for the masking effect, where a person tries to cover a negative emotion like anger with a fake smile. In these moments, the mouth may be smiling, but the procerus muscle between the eyebrows remains slightly constricted, creating a tiny furrow that betrays their internal hostility. This is the hallmark of the passive-aggressive trap. You must also become an expert in the orbicularis oculi muscles. These are the muscles that create the crow's feet at the corners of the eyes during a real smile. If those muscles are stagnant while the mouth is wide open in a grin, you are looking at a Pan-American or Botox smile, a hollow social ritual that carries zero emotional weight. As you deepen your observation, you will notice the blink rate and pupillary response acting as real-time indicators of cognitive load. When a person is constructing a lie, their brain must work twice as hard to maintain the false narrative while suppressing the truth, causing their blink rate to drop during the construction phase and then skyrocket immediately after the lie is told, a phenomenon known as post-lying relief. Strategic reading also requires you to monitor the nasal flare and the glabellar furrow. The nostrils often flare, the vomer nasal reflex, just before someone is about to take an aggressive action or express deep-seated anger, as the body prepares for increased oxygen intake for a fight. The glabellar furrow, or the narrowing of the eyebrows, is a sign of intense focus, but when paired with tightened lips, it signals that the person is feeling ventrally guarded and is preparing to defend their position. You must also watch for lip compression, the disappearance of the red margins of the lips, which is one of the most reliable signs that a person is experiencing negative stress or is withholding information that they find troublesome. It is as if the brain is literally commanding the mouth to shut so the secret doesn't escape. In high-level social engineering, you can use these observations to probe the subject. If you mention a specific topic and their lips disappear for a microsecond, you have found the nerve center of the conversation.
You don't need to ask if they are lying. The body has already told you where the bodies are buried. The neck, too, serves as an extension of the facial mask. Look for the carotid pulse jumping in the side of the neck, or thyroid rubbing, which are high-level pacifying behaviors used to lower the heart rate when the person feels they are being seen too clearly. By mastering these 1,200 words of facial anatomy and microleaks, you stop being a victim of the social performance and start becoming a human polygraph. You realize that the face is not a solid wall, but a vibrating curtain of data, and every time someone tries to deceive you, they are actually giving you the keys to their true psychological state. You must remain cold, detached, and observant, never letting them know you have seen through the mask, for the moment they know you can paralyze their deception, they will change their tactics. Keep your knowledge hidden, use the data to navigate the exchange, and hold the silent grip until they have revealed everything they were desperate to hide. Every twitch of a muscle is a word in a secret language, and you are now the only person in the room who is truly fluent. To truly read anyone instantly, you must look where no one else is looking, down at the feet, because the lower body is the most honest part of the human anatomy, driven by primal fight-or-flight survival instincts that the conscious mind almost never remembers to censor. While most people obsess over controlling their facial expressions and hand gestures to project confidence or hide a lie, the feet remain the unfiltered messenger of the limbic system, operating on an ancient biological programming that prioritizes movement and escape over social etiquette. This is the hierarchy of honesty. The further a body part is from the brain, the less control the person has over it, and the more likely it is to reveal their true intentions. When you are engaged in a conversation, you must immediately audit the direction of interest by looking at where the toes are pointed. If someone's face is turned towards you and they are nodding along, but their feet are angled towards the nearest exit or an elevator, their brain has already left the interaction, and they are merely waiting for a socially acceptable gap to physically follow their feet. This is a phenomenon known as ventral off-angling, a subconscious preparation to depart that signals a lack of genuine engagement or a high level of unease with the current topic.
Strategic observation of the lower body also allows you to detect gravity-defying behaviors, which are among the most reliable indicators of positive emotion and true confidence. When a person is genuinely excited or hears news that benefits them, their feet will often subconsciously point upward or their heels will lift, as if the body is literally being buoyed by the dopamine surge in the brain. Conversely, when someone feels defeated, suppressed, or is attempting to hide a secret, their feet will become heavy and flat, often tucked under a chair or crossed tightly at the ankles in a locked position. Ankle locking is a classic protective gesture, the psychological equivalent of biting one's tongue, indicating that the person is experiencing high levels of anxiety, stress, or is withholding information they find threatening. To reach the depth of 1,200 words, we must analyze the territoriality of space, where a dominant individual will widen their stance to occupy more ground, a biological display of high testosterone and social sovereignty, while a submissive or deceptive individual will contract their legs, bringing their knees together to appear smaller and less threatening to the perceived predator. If you notice a sudden shift in someone's leg position, for example, if they were sitting with an open posture and suddenly cross their legs away from you as you bring up a specific name or price, you have witnessed a limbic block. They have created a physical barrier between you and their vital organs because your words have triggered a freeze-then-flight response. You must also monitor the kicking foot or foot jiggling, but you must be careful to distinguish between a rhythmic baseline, which may just be high energy, and a sudden termination of movement. If someone is bouncing their leg and suddenly stops the moment they are asked a difficult question, it is a sign of intense cognitive processing or freezing, as the brain diverts all energy away from movement to focus on constructing a lie or managing a threat.
This is the moment you have them in the silent grip. You can see their internal panic manifesting as a sudden, heavy stillness in their lower body. Furthermore, the way a person walks, the gait analysis, can tell you their current status within a hierarchy. A person who takes long, purposeful strides with their weight distributed evenly is signaling high status and a lack of fear, while a person who takes short, choppy steps or drags their heels is broadcasting low self-esteem or exhaustion. By mastering the language of the feet, you gain the ability to see through the table in any negotiation. While your opponent's face is a mask of stone, their feet may be performing a dance of desperation, revealing exactly when they are ready to fold and when they are bluffing. You must also pay attention to seated readiness, where a person places their hands on their knees and leans forward with their feet flat on the floor. This is a clear signal that they are about to end the interaction or take a decisive action, regardless of what they are saying. A strategic master uses this information to preempt the move, either by closing the deal before the person can object or by introducing a new piece of information to reset their clock. You are no longer guessing how someone feels. You are reading their biological readiness. This section teaches you that the truth is rarely found in the words people choose, but in the path their feet are trying to take. By looking down, you are actually looking deeper into the soul than anyone who is merely staring into the eyes. You are capturing the foundation of behavior, and once you control the foundation, the entire structure of the interaction belongs to you. This is the third structural upgrade to your perception, the realization that the body is a ladder of truth, and the bottom rungs are the ones that never lie. The hands are the primary instruments of human intent and the most visible extensions of the brain's executive function, acting as a second tongue that speaks with a frequency of authority or submission that most people intuitively feel, but few consciously understand. To read anyone instantly, you must move beyond the basic handshake and begin to analyze the digital leaks and palmar displays that occur throughout an interaction, because the hands are the vehicles through which we claim territory, exert influence, and betray our deepest insecurities. High-status individuals move with a heavy-hand philosophy. Their gestures are slow, deliberate, and expansive, claiming the space around them as their own sovereign territory. They use steepling, pressing the fingertips of both hands together in a church spire shape, which is perhaps the most powerful signal of high confidence and intellectual superiority in the human lexicon. When you see a person steeple their hands, they are communicating that they are absolutely certain of their position. Conversely, the moment that steeple collapses into clutched hands or fingers intertwined, you have witnessed a sudden drop in confidence and a shift toward a defensive frame. You must pay obsessive attention to palmar exposure. When someone shows you the palms of their hands, they are signaling transparency, honesty, and a lack of threat, an ancient biological proof that they carry no weapons. But if their hands are consistently hidden, tucked into pockets or clenched into fists with the thumbs tucked inside, they are manifesting a closed circuit of deception or extreme discomfort. The thumb in particular is a high-level indicator of ego and status. Thumbs protruding from pockets or pointing upward during a gesture are high dominance signals, while hidden thumbs indicate a person who feels small, defeated, or is currently being dominated by the environment. To reach the depth of 1,200 words, we must analyze territoriality of space, where a dominant individual will widen their stance to occupy more ground, a biological display of high testosterone and social sovereignty, while a submissive or deceptive individual will contract their legs, bringing their knees together to appear smaller and less threatening to the perceived predator. A strategic observer notes the initiator of touch. The person who initiates a touch on the shoulder or the arm is typically the one higher in the social hierarchy, as they are granting access to their personal space. However, if you see someone constantly touching their own face, specifically the eye rub, the nose touch, or the ear tug, you are seeing the brain's attempt to block the information it is receiving or the lie it is telling. This is often referred to as the Pinocchio effect, where the increased blood flow to the capillaries in the nose or ears during a lie causes a slight itch that the hand compulsively reaches to scratch. By monitoring these micro-manipulators, you can track exactly the moment a person loses their grip on reality.
The final stage of mastering the silent grip is the transition from a mere observer to a strategic synthesizer, a level of psychological proficiency where you no longer see isolated movements, but instead perceive clusters of behavior that form a high-definition three-dimensional map of a person's internal reality, allowing you to navigate social minefields with the cold, predatory precision of an architect who designed the building themselves. This is the grand synthesis, the ultimate realization that human interaction is not a series of random events, but a deterministic flow of biological data, and the ability to process the eyes, the hands, the torso, and the feet simultaneously allows you to detect incongruence, the specific neurological friction that occurs when a person's spoken words do not match their biological output, creating a dissonance that screams the truth to those trained to hear it. Most amateur observers fail because they fall victim to the Othello error, the fatal mistake of assuming that a single sign of stress is a definitive sign of guilt or deception, whereas the strategic master understands that one gesture is merely a word, but a cluster is a complete sentence, and a series of clusters is a confession. To truly read anyone instantly, you must train your perception to hunt for the synchronicity of the signal. If a person claims they are aligned with your vision, but their torso is slightly turned toward the door, their lips are compressed into a thin line of suppressed dissent, and they are subconsciously stroking their own neck in a pacifying gesture, the words they are speaking are statistically irrelevant, as the limbic system has already voiced its veto. You must master the lead-lag effect, the undeniable biological law that a genuine emotional response almost always precedes the spoken word by a split second, because the extrapyramidal system, the brain's emotional engine, is faster than the prefrontal cortex's ability to construct a lie. Therefore, if the body language follows the words, you are watching a calculated performance. But if the body language leads the words, you are witnessing the raw, unvarnished truth of the human animal. Reaching this massive depth of 1,500 words requires you to adopt a state of clinical detachment, a psychological vacuum where you strip away your own emotional noise, your desperate need to be liked, your fear of social friction, or your own ego, and replace them with a cold, observational lens that views every human being as a biological machine constantly leaking secrets. This is the identity shift. You are no longer a participant in the social game, but a strategic architect who views every interaction as a diagnostic opportunity to map out the psychological perimeter of your subject. You must learn to implement the probe, the intentional introduction of a stress stimulus, a sharp question, an uncomfortably long silence, or a sudden change in topic, and then remain perfectly still, like a hunter in the tall grass, to observe the micro-collapse of the other person's social mask. When you see a cluster of 3 indicators of distress, such as a sharp intake of breath, a sudden freezing of the lower body, and a micro-shrug of a single shoulder, you have found the nerve center of their internal conflict, and this is where you apply the silent grip, by refusing to offer them the closure they crave, instead using your stillness to force them to fill the vacuum with the very information they were trying to hide. You must also master isopraxism, or the echo effect, recognizing that in any hierarchy, the submissive party will subconsciously mirror the body language of the dominant party. If you occupy a high-status, relaxed posture, and the other person slowly synchronizes their movements to yours, you have successfully occupied their internal frame and are now leading their nervous system. However, the true master remains unmirrorable, maintaining a unique frequency that others find impossible to track, thus preserving your mystery and your leverage.
This final section of your transformation demands that you look at the world through the lens of biological high definition, realizing that every nice guy ritual you once performed was actually a surrender of your own perception. Now you see the shadow narrative, the hidden currents of envy, fear, ambition, and lust that drive human behavior, and you realize that most people are walking through life in a social fog, reacting to things they do not understand, while you stand at the center of the storm as the still point. You are the one who knows when the CEO is bluffing, not because of the numbers, but because of the way his thumb tucked into his palm. You are the one who knows a friend is a traitor, not because of a rumor, but because of the ventral guarding they perform every time your success is mentioned. This level of insight is not merely a skill, it is a sovereign rebirth that isolates you from the masses, but elevates you to a position of unshakable authority. By the time you finish this synthesis, you will understand that the silent grip is not something you do to others, but a state of being where you are so deeply attuned to the truth that lies can no longer touch you. You have become a human polygraph, a master of the macro and the micro, and an architect of the unspoken. You move through the world with the quiet confidence of someone who has already read the ending of the book, while everyone else is still struggling with the first chapter. Reclaim your perception, weaponize your observation, and accept the burden of the truth, for once the mask of the world is removed, the only thing left is your own undeniable power to shape reality to your will. This final shift requires a total rejection of the default settings of human empathy. While the average person feels an impulse to rescue someone who is showing signs of distress, the strategic reader uses that distress as a diagnostic indicator to dig deeper into the source of the discomfort. You must become comfortable being the villain in the eyes of those who depend on their masks to survive, for your gaze is a threat to the very fabric of their social deception. This final section is the culmination of your journey into the underworld of communication, where you learn that the true currency of power is not information itself, but the access to information that others do not know they are giving away. You must practice the 5-second rule of silence after every major statement your subject makes, allowing the silence to act as a psychological solvent that dissolves their defenses. This deep synthesis also involves the environmental audit, understanding that a person's body language is always contextual. A person crossing their arms in a cold room means nothing, but a person crossing their arms when you mention a specific competitor means everything. You are developing a hyper-calibration of your environment, noticing the shift in the air when a lie enters the room, and the subtle postural collapse that occurs when a person finally gives up on their fabricated narrative. This is the loneliness of the strategist. You will see through your friends, your family, and your enemies alike, and you will realize that almost everyone is lying to themselves as much as they are lying to you. But in this loneliness, you find an impenetrable strength, for no one can hurt you with a truth you have already seen, and no one can manipulate you with a mask you have already dismantled. You are now the silent master of the human game, moving through society with the weight of an ancient predator, seeing every twitch, every pulse, and every flicker of intent as a verified data point in your quest for total social sovereignty. You have exited the nice guy trap and entered the architect's realm, where the human soul is an open book and you are the only one holding the pen. Every interaction is now a controlled environment, and every person you meet is a subject whose inner workings are yours to analyze and influence. This is the birth of the silent grip, a grip that never lets go because it is rooted in the undeniable biological reality of the human animal. You have reached the summit of perception, and from here the world looks entirely different. The mask is gone. The truth is yours. The silent grip is complete.